Welcome to No Boxes, Just Verses, the podcast where we go beyond the bios, beyond the resumes and the titles, and we explore the lessons of today's most inspiring leaders that have shaped them through the music that has moved their journey. Each week, we build a playlist of a leader's life: 5 songs, 5 lessons, 1 unforgettable conversation.
Let's put the pedal to the metal, let the top lean back. I don't know where we're going, I don't know what we're running to. I'm checking for you, how you feel about that. I think it's time we rendezvous.
And today we are joined by the incomparable Barbara Adachi. Barbara, welcome to the show.
So happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me to this amazing podcast because I love the idea of music and I just think it's really special. I love music and it was really fun thinking about the music that has really kind of marked different milestones in my career and in my life, in my journey.
You are such a trailblazer. And I know you've done, listeners, she's done so many podcasts. So I was so honored when she said yes to this one. I'm so glad she wasn't like, oh, just another leadership podcast again.
No, it's such an honor to be asked, especially by you. And I have so much admiration and respect for all you've accomplished in your outreach to the big community of women leaders and men leaders. And just, I'll never forget meeting you at the Stanford event, like probably 3 years ago now. And you were on the stage and we just kind of caught each other for a minute. And I just said, oh, I need to know her, And so I'm really excited that our paths have crossed in so many places and just today is just really the highlight for me to be part of this program with you that you've put together. I'm just so excited about the concept, and I think it will really be a fun way to kind of learn about people and their leadership lessons.
For the listeners that are only able to hear this on audio, you are missing it because what you need to know about Barbara, and we'll tell you how you can follow her later, she is the best dressed person in the room, hands down. So I remember meeting you as well because I'm looking and I'm like, who is that woman? Is so incredibly dressed. Like, hands down, always just completely put together. I want to emulate you so much.
Well, no, I think the roles are reversed here because I actually think you are just always put together so well. Everything from the accessory to the handbag to the colors. And just never seen you wear the same thing twice ever. I've been at you at so many events and you always look beautiful. So that coming from you, that's an extra special compliment. So thank you for that.
Well, I will take it, but you are quite the dresser. You're also quite the powerhouse. We'll go into your background in a minute, but I do have to share with our listeners that you are that type of leader that when we get asked as other leaders to be a part of something or attend something, and we hear your name is attached, it's like an automatic yes. And I have a really recent example. You and I are part of a cohort. There'll be more to talk about this cohort as it unfolds in the next couple of months and et cetera. But we had a intro meeting where everyone in the cohort got to introduce themselves and why they decided to join this really small, impactful, and global, quite frankly, cohort. And person by person, they would start with, my name is Shannon Nash. My name is Jane Doe. And I actually saw that Barbara Adachi was going to be a part of this. And so I knew I had to join. And I am not exaggerating. By person, that was why people said they opened the email and decided they wanted to be a part of this cohort. I'm not exaggerating. You know I'm not, Barbara.
I would say that particular kickoff meeting was that part of it was like, I was just so shocked and humbled and I was speechless. I really was. I was just really taken aback. I didn't know what to say after that. It just was overwhelming, to be honest with you. And first of all, it's such a great privilege to be part of that group. And we'll talk about that more during our conversation today. But I think, you're in the same situation, Shannon, and it's all about what you want to do to give back. And I think the stories that you'll be collecting through this podcast will just really reinforce your own personal passion for this. But I think everybody that you're asking, that's really very fundamental to kind of who we are today and how we've gotten here, because it's through the help of others. Do you know what I mean? Along the way that have really pulled us through or pushed us through or given us the courage or confidence when we needed it the most. And there's nothing more important now than to pay it forward because we have the opportunity and privilege to do that, to have, for me, I was thinking about the songs and everything. I mean, one of the ones I thought of was kind of the impossible dream because I've always said that my life has been like a really old movie called The Incredible Journey, but it's really been something that beyond anything I could have even imagined as a child or even as a young adult. So I think with that gratitude of being able to be where we both are today, and I'm just so grateful. And I just think that it's my opportunity to actually help others achieve their dreams. There's nothing more gratifying than that because I never thought my dreams would come true.
Oh, and you've done it in spades. If it wasn't apparent on that call, I like nothing more than the fact that you got your flowers and you got your flowers from multiple people. Not only do you deserve them, I'm a true believer in giving people their flowers while they're alive and can
That's
do
so
something
true.
about it.
Yeah, thank
So
you. Oh, no, that means so much. Thank you.
So, Barbara, let's dive into your amazing background. Barbara Adachi is a board director and former senior executive with a lifelong passion for unlocking the power of people to drive business performances. She brings deep expertise in human capital strategy, workforce transformation, and inclusive leadership, shared by decades of advising Fortune 500 companies and leading Deloitte's 1 billion human capital practice in the US and Mexico and India, overseeing over 3,000 professionals. Now, in the boardroom, Barbara is known for translating talent insights into strategic advantage, particularly in complex regulated industries like healthcare and insurance. She's a complete trailblazer, you guys, both as the first minority and female partner to lead the national human capital consulting business at Deloitte. Her passion of paying it forward is so evident. She served as a national managing principal for Deloitte's award winning Women's Initiative for the entire US firm from 2007 to 2011, achieving a significant milestone of 1,000 women partners, principals, and directors. That's huge, especially in a firm like that. Your current corporate boards include serving as an independent director of VSP Vision, where you chair the compensation and human capital committees, and Old Republic International, where you serve as the audit and governance and non-gov committees. You've been on lots of boards before that. You were named an NACD Directorship 100 honoree. You've been recognized as an AAPI board member making difference by Board Perspectives magazine. So many accolades. I probably need to be here for like 2 hours to read them all. At the end of the day, I want my listeners to understand she's a badass. Yes, we can say badass.
Yeah.
Has mentored so many people, and we are so fortunate to have you on No Boxes Just Verses. Barbara, thank you for joining us
Oh,
today.
again, Shannon, thank you. When you reached out to me, I was so elated and so honored at the same time because I said, oh my gosh, I just think the world of you, first of all, and I would do anything for you. But I think just what you're doing by bringing these stories forward is amazing. And I'm just so thrilled and honored to be part of it. So thank you.
Of course. I mean, I also wanted to know more about your story. So selfishly, I was like, I got to call Barbara. Let's start from where it all began, the beginning of your journey, where you grew up. What was young Barbara like before you got out of high school? Look, we want to understand your journey. And here's the thing, the song that you picked, this shows, and it also tells so much about just you, is Somewhere Over the Rainbow. Now, that song was first done by Judy Garland, but nope,
Right.
that is not the version that you picked. You picked a version that, and I'm going to have you pronounce the name, by the way, but you picked a version that I actually had to, I know the song, but I had to go listen to it. And I was like, oh my gosh, I know that version because I hear it on movies, TV shows. It's the one with the ukulele. And it actually is probably one of the more famous versions of the song. So it's by, his name is Israel and last name.
Yes, Kama Kawaii. I think I'm pronouncing it correctly. He's Hawaiian, but it always makes me smile. It always makes me happy because it does bring back great memories. So, yeah.
So let's go through those young Barbara memories.
My background is I'm third generation Japanese American, which means my parents were both born in the US, but my grandparents came over from Japan in the early 1900s. I actually was born in Japan, but that's because my dad was in the army at the time and we came back when I was about 6 months old. But I grew up in LA, South Central Los Angeles. We lived with my grandparents until we were about seven. And at the time, it was post World War II and early 1950s. And it was going on then with all the redlining. So there was only certain neighborhoods where Japanese and Asians could buy homes, and that was in kind of the South Central area. So I went to public high school at Dorsey High School, a home of a lot of famous athletes. And so I grew up in a neighborhood that was predominantly Black and Japanese, a very small population. But like my high school, my graduating class had 800, and there are about 60 Japanese. There were only two Caucasian, and the rest were Black. So that was my neighborhood. My parents lived in that neighborhood until my dad passed away about, I guess, 15 years ago now. But I really loved growing up there. And my parents were not educated. So I was the first person in the family to go to college. I have a younger brother. And my parents just really worked hard to make sure that we had that. But they talked about us going to college from the time we were small children. And they felt that it was so important because they didn't have that education. My dad was a gardener, which is a very traditional occupation for Japanese Americans, men. And my mom was a bookkeeper at the produce market. In fact, she took two jobs to help pay for my college tuition. And I also got part-time jobs when I was in high school. So I kind of went through a culture shock when I went to, because I got into UCLA, but my mom was like, oh, you got into UCLA, you could live at home. Well, of course, I didn't want to live at home. So I got into UC Santa Barbara. So I went there and I really went through a major culture shock because they had no 24-hour markets, which I'm used to in LA, and B, no people of color. I mean, literally, I went from a lot of Japanese American in the neighborhood to like two Asians on the entire campus and no Blacks. And I was just like lost. I was completely lost there, but I found my way. I finished school there and everything. But I just think the song, when I think about Somewhere Over the Rainbow, one of the things that my parents really believed in was just to follow your dream. It's going to be hard, but there's a concept that my father would always talk about. And in Japanese, the word is ganbaru. And what it means is to never, ever give up. And it's always about trying your best. And so, like, even if you don't succeed, as long as you tried, that's what matters, and not giving up just because it got hard. So I really think that when I think about Somewhere Over the Rainbow, it's really around being able to reach for what I thought was impossible, and that anything was possible, but then I wasn't going to be discouraged if it didn't happen. I mean, I think that was the other realistic side of it that my parents taught us was it doesn't always happen, but you kind of accept what happens and then move on. Do you know what I mean? But you've got to try, because if you don't go for it, you're never going to know. I think that was a really important part of my childhood. And I look back and my parents just gave us so much in terms of opportunity and sacrificed a lot to make sure that we got a good start in life.
I didn't even know that about your background. I knew you were from SoCal, but, like, I wouldn't have said South Central, and I didn't understand the and thank you, I didn't even understand it. As soon as you said Dorsey, I thought about all the, like, the athletes and stuff, and I was like, "Well, I think they're mostly African American folks that I know," and so what a time to grow up where you are in this neighborhood with all these people of color, and they own their own businesses, right? It's a different time, and they're putting money back into their community. Like, the dollar is staying in the community longer, right?
When Boys in the Hood came out, I mean, that is exactly where I grew up. Crenshaw Boulevard, all of those automobile dealerships along Crenshaw, Jefferson, that whole intersection around there. And there was a Japanese community called Crenshaw Square where we used to all hang out, where there's a bowling alley, Holiday Bowl. But there was always a closeness between the Black community and the Japanese American community. Like when I got into college, our neighbor across the street, Mr. Redman, I remember when he moved into the neighborhood because he was like the first Black person on our block. And I went over to his house and I said, welcome to the neighborhood. And while I was growing up, he was a very successful businessman, but he would invite me in and he read my college essays because my parents couldn't really do that for me because they didn't really grow up. And it was really, yeah, I didn't think anything of it. Do you know what I mean? And it's just the way it was. And so I just think I just really appreciated it even more when I went away to school and didn't see the diversity there, and I felt lost. I just said, "Well, this is just so different." So I did feel that that was such a foundation for my life and my commitment to caring about diversity and caring about people of color, not just being one myself, but just really kind of embracing all of that. And frankly, there've been a lot of articles written about the Japanese and the Black community together in South Central LA and how we really kind of helped each other. And it really was true. It was just an important part of who I am today. I wouldn't change it for the world.
We'll go into, like, your career and what you wind up doing,
Yeah.
especially in human capital management. It doesn't surprise me that not only do you wind up going into that field, but you wind up excelling in that field. I think a lot of that starts from your upbringing and what you were exposed to and how you learned how to relate to people, like, just innately because that was your environment.
It's funny because my mom grew up in even and further more into the kind of the Watts area, Watts neighborhood area. We lived with my grandparents, like I said, until I was around 7. And her best friends in growing up was she went to Fauché and then Polytechnic High School. She didn't go to college, but her claim to fame was that her best friend married Jackie Robinson. So Rachel Robinson was her best friend in junior high. And so the thing is that, I think what I really learned from my parents, because sometimes in a community, particularly like a Japanese community where you've had this history of what happened to the Japanese Americans during World War II, and my mom was also interned in the camps and everything, you could grow up very kind of anti-American, or you could grow up just want to stick to your own. But I think they were just always very open. And I just think that that really helped us not worry about things, even in the height of racial tensions, that we feel these things today. But back in the 60s and all of that, it was pretty rough back then too. But, what I'm thrilled about is, and I don't have that many songs on my list, but I grew up on Motown, right? Motown and the Beatles and all of that were all part of my high school and junior high school years. And so I'm not sure I would have been exposed to that had I been in a different neighborhood. And I love those. That's still my favorite kind of music. Totally. But I think it taught me the most important things it taught me is around just accepting people for who they are. And my parents were just always very welcoming to others. And growing up there, that's just our neighborhood. After my mom passed away, my father, we had these wonderful neighbors who moved into Mr. Redmond's house, another Black family. And they really looked after my dad in terms of like, my brother lives about 40 miles away. And my dad was living alone. They would call my brother, there's something going on at your father's house. And they had a key, Marlon, and just a wonderful family. They were at my dad's 90th birthday party. I mean, just all of those things. And I was so happy that my parents, stayed in that neighborhood because it's gone through a lot of change. It's probably more gentrified now than it was back then. But I just think it was just such a great place to grow up.
It was community. You had a tribe, it was community, and I hear you had a lot of support from your extended community, right?
Absolutely.
Like, that frames a lot for you later on in life. So you wind up going to Santa Barbara, graduate from there,
Yeah.
and then take us on your next part of your journey. You actually pick a song that listeners, I always have to do this part. First I was afraid. I was petrified. I Will Survive by Gloria Gaynor.
I love that song. That could actually apply to so many chapters in my life. But yeah, that one is particularly meaningful. But I think after graduating from Santa Barbara, I really wanted to be a teacher, but there weren't any teaching jobs. And I had worked my way through college at an insurance company because the first summer I came home, I had to get a job because I needed money. And so every morning my mom would cut out these want ads and put them on the kitchen table when she went to work. She go, you need to call like these people. And I finally got in a job at Paul Revere Life Insurance Company, and I worked there every summer. And then when I graduated, my boss said, hey, listen, I'll hire you back as a secretary in a one-girl office, but you have to give me a 2-year commitment, which I did. But then halfway through that, they opened up a San Francisco office. So I moved to San Francisco. I remember the president of the company called me and he goes, I just want you to know that you're the only secretary in the whole company that has a college degree. I mean, I'm really dating myself, but this is in the 70s. And I was actually very happy being a secretary. I had nothing wrong, but I met my first, one of two important sponsors in my life. I didn't know the word back then. He was a mentor sponsor, but Vincent Benitez. And he just said, "Barbara, I really think you could go into sales." Well, of course, that's like, no way. I am not selling insurance. I just picture like this kind of pushy, kind of obnoxious people trying to push products down. And he said, "No, no, no. It's all about education and educating people and solving problems." I thought, "Oh, education. I wanted to be a teacher." So basically, he put me on the path of learning every part of the business, from underwriting to paying claims to being customer service, all of those things, because the company wasn't on board. The company was like, we had a woman 10 years ago and it didn't work out, and we're never going to have another woman. So it's tough being first, you know what I mean? And so the thing is, so you really needed somebody that's going to pound the table for you. And that was him. And I learned so many lessons from him, Shannon, and I'm still in touch with him today. He's in his 80s, but then we just actually had coffee about last November. We try to get together once a year. And I just think he changed my life because my parents didn't know how to really help me once I got out of school because they didn't have careers per se. And I didn't know that I was either. I mean, they were happy I had a secretarial job. I didn't think anything of it. And I was a good secretary, by the way, but I was very organized and I really liked business. And I was in, like I said, a one girl office working for two people. But I think what I learned here, and this is, I guess the song here is probably more around defying gravity because it's really like against all odds that I was able to even achieve going into that role, was that my boss and my mentor and my sponsor, Vincent, I mean, one of the lessons I learned from him, he had this picture on his desk, and I didn't know what it was. It was a black and white photo. It looked like basically a tool shed, all this wood, and then a little boy sitting in front of it. And I said, "Who's that?" And he said, "What? That's me." And that was my house. And I grew up in East LA, and we had like a 2-bedroom house with 6 kids, and we all were sleeping together. And then he goes, "The reason I have that picture is to never forget where I came from." And honestly, that's something that I still remember the conversation. I remember sitting at the chair in his office, and I remember that's something that has stayed with me my entire life. And that is to be appreciative and to understand where we all came from, and that everything that happens from that point on is truly a gift. It's a privilege. It's not something that I ever expected. So I think without him, I would not be here today. I know that. When I became a partner at Deloitte, I called him that day to thank him. It was probably 10, 15 years later, but I really think it's important to think about the people that have helped you along the way. And I'm just still so appreciative, even though I'm past my career now, I'm in retirement, but those things that were turning points and that those conversations, I could still hear them today. But the belief that somebody has in you is something rare, and sometimes we don't even want to believe in ourselves, let alone think somebody else thinks we could do something. So I really needed that push because I didn't have the confidence to do something, especially fighting against all the tides there, swimming against them in terms of, oh, it's never going to happen.
Absolutely. So many lessons there, so many nuggets. You, first of all, uproot yourself. What some people will understand, but a lot of people who don't live in California don't get. Northern California and Southern California are not the same. They're
Right.
not close. Like, you can't just lay like, oh, I'm in South Central and I'll be in the Bay Area and like I'll see you in an hour. No, they are very far from each other. They're very different places. So there was something in you that allowed you to leave because you were at this point, you for most part have been in SoCal. You have a community, you have a comfort zone. You leave that to come to the Bay Area, which
Yeah,
is a totally different place.
absolutely.
Totally different culture, totally different everything. But that leads you, taking that chance leads you to this supporter that you
Absolutely.
may not have otherwise have, who did something really. One of the things I want to hone in on that he did for you is not only did he believe in you, he said something that I think I tell you, every young professional this: learn the job and the business. And the best way to do that, and it happened to me early in my career, is I sat and I went with the people that what they call carry the bag, the people that
Yeah.
sell the service and the product. Get to know them, spend a day with them, spend a week with them, as long as you can, because they will teach you the business. If you or go into sales yourself for a while. I told my
Yeah.
kids, like, a year or two in sales will never do you wrong in your career. And he did that for you as a secretary. That changes the game for you.
It was totally a game changer. And I think when you said that, Chan, brought back really like this amazing meetings that I would go with him to. Like, I would literally be the only woman in the room. Like, he would take me to these big lunches where there'd be all these men, and I'd be like the only woman. And here I am, a secretary. I have no idea what to say. I didn't have any confidence. And he'd take me to calls with the insurance brokers to make a pitch. I'd watch him. Then we'd come back to his office and we'd debrief. What did you learn? What did I do? What could I have done better? I mean, all those things, he literally took me under his wing. I hated to leave him, but I did, and I felt bad, but he also knew it was time for me to go and try something new. Yeah.
It was time for you to go and try something new. We've talked about I Will Survive. Defying Gravity is a song you mentioned. We know that this starts becoming a part of the narrative for you. That song is by Adina Menzel and Kristen Chenoweth. But there's also another version by Cynthia Erivo.
Yeah.
It's the same
Yeah.
song from Wicked. I love that song, by the way. So you're at this phase where, like, you are defying gravity. So you leave this job. Tell me where you
So
go.
I had 6 jobs before I landed at Deloitte. So 6 jobs in geez, when did I leave him? The 17, it's probably in, like, over a 12-year period. I literally was changing jobs and making mistakes. I think the one thing that I wasn't afraid to fail. You know, I knew that I would be able to pick myself up. And I think because I was a secretary and realized that how lucky I was to kind of get that if I ever had to go back to that, I would be okay. Do you know what I mean? I wasn't like, oh, now I
Right.
just have to keep elevating myself along the way. I took a lot of lateral moves and then I also just wanted to see what I could do. Yeah, so my first job, I wanted to be an insurance broker, which is on the other side where I could not just represent one company's products, but I could look at Paul Revere and everybody's products, but work directly with clients. So I went to a small brokerage firm and then I went to a larger one. I'm in sales and I'm actually trying to build businesses. So when I went to one, Karuna Black, they were property and casualty broker, but they didn't have anybody doing health insurance. So I came in to help sell health insurance to all their clients. So I started with 0 clients, 0. And then, you know, I had to help go out and cold call and get rejected. And then from there, I went back to Blue Cross of California and was a regional manager there. And then I went then back to a small consulting firm. So I kind of just kept switching around. But I think what I was looking for, honestly, was a place that I felt like I belonged. I wanted a culture that really was a place where I liked all the people, where I felt like I could fit in, where I could live my own values, where I could be me. And it took me literally 6 jobs before I ended up at Deloitte.
Which makes sense because this is your background. You grew up in a community was always really important to you.
Exactly, exactly. So I never found that. And then along the way, I got married. I had a small child. We had some, you know, personal financial struggles with my husband's partner who did some kind of not really good things in terms of we had to then sell our house. It was
What?
really tough. It was really tough. We had to move a couple times.
Oh,
We are selling our house in the worst market ever where the interest rates are like 15%. It was really hard, both professionally. I had to work. I've always been I'm one of the contributors, but I was also becoming the primary wage earner in the family. So with that, the responsibility of now having a daughter and then also wanting to make sure that we are financially stable and then having to change jobs and then also changing homes. It was a tough time. So I think looking back, you think, "Oh, I made it through that." But you know, you just have to keep going inside and saying, what is it? I just have to keep going. I'm going to persevere. This is not going to take me down. You know what I mean? I think what kind of kept me going was really just being strong and saying that we're going to get through this. I don't know what it's going to look like. I didn't grow up with much. Do you know what I mean? So I wasn't afraid of like not having things. Like we needed basic things like a place to live, a car, get to work, those kinds of things. But outside of that, it just takes you down to kind of the basics. Like I'm just here in survival mode. So that was really still that kind of, I will survive this. And I really was still looking. I kept looking for that place that I said, you know what, I could work here for the next 30 years. That's not the case anymore with the younger generations. But back then, I was still in that kind of the mindset that my parents only had like one job. So I should just have one place to work. And I guess I was a millennial before the term was made in terms of like every 14 months, I'm going to change jobs, you know? You do what you have to do. you do what you have to do personally to survive. And at the time, my family was always the most important thing and still is. I don't ever want to say a job's a job, but you do what you have to do. And if you're not happy with, then you leave and then you move on. But you have to make sure that your family stays intact and that all the things that are important to you about that and your own values don't get compromised. And then you could live with yourself. A job
Yeah.
became a job.
It sounds like you were very clear even back then about what your values were, not compromising on those values. If this doesn't work, I'll go over here. And I gotta imagine, especially what you were doing now, like I said, you're selling. You were in a lot of environments, once again, where you were the first or the only person that looks like you.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There were very few women. There were very few women of color. There were just, and then I just was finding myself in a much more competitive environment. I never even thought of getting an advanced degree, and now I'm in competition with a lot of men predominantly who had, MBAs or PhDs or, masters or whatever, and so you really had to kinda dig down deep to kind of figure out, how am I gonna make it here, and how am I gonna put food on the table, and, just really make sure that we stay together as a family and not let it tear us apart. Because a lot of times I know that money could be the root of all evil. And when you lose some financial security, that could also become the beginning of the end for the relationship because it gets in the way of what's important. So I think, really keeping an eye on that and making sure that I could not get distracted by that. Do you know what I mean? Just saying, this is how it is now. We're going to get out of this. And then, ultimately did. But then the thing is that while you're in it, it just seems like, oh my God, is this ever going to be good again?
Right.
Once you have a family, you've got children. We just have one, but everything's about them and making sure that they have their needs taken care of and that they don't suffer because of your
Yeah.
mistakes.
Well, you grew up with parents that did that for you, so you had the role models right there. So, okay, before we get to how you really ascend at Deloitte, you gotta get to Deloitte first. So take me through the journey of, like, you get to Deloitte.
Yes.
What is that about?
So I landed at Deloitte and I was there to actually start the human capital practice in San Francisco. I came in as a senior manager, no clients. I was actually interviewed for 6 months by Touche Ross. And then when I finally accepted the job to start in January of 1990, it was now Deloitte and Touche. So I get there and all the people that interviewed me, other than the people in Los Angeles, are no longer there. So it's just like, oh, good. I don't know anybody. And these people are wondering, what are you doing? And so the first obstacle I had there is that nobody wanted to take me to any clients because they didn't want to mess up the audit. This is way before Sarbanes-Oxley. So this is really around, oh no, I don't know what you do. I don't know this health insurance or employee benefits or compensation stuff. And we're not going to let you come in and mess with that. So you're going to have to find your own clients. So literally took me a year and a half to get my first client. I did 50 to 60 cold calls a week. I sent out mass mailings to people saying, I can help you reduce your healthcare costs if you just give me 20 minutes and blah, blah, blah. I got very few appointments. And then finally, I had a few partners who I created relationships with that they're willing to take a risk on me and take me out to their clients to see if I could help them. And again, that was prior to Sarbanes-Oxley, where you could provide both consulting services and audit services to the same client. So it was an uphill battle. And again, helped grow the practice. I actually thought about leaving in between. Allison, our daughter, was, I think, 7 or 8 years old at the time. And I was getting home at 9 or 10 o'clock at night. And I just said, I can't do this. And I got another job offer from another consulting firm. I went in, and that was around the time we'd launched the Women's Initiative. And so I went in, and I actually ended up speaking to the head of the Women's Initiative, who was Ellen Gabriel, the head of our human capital practice. And I said, you know what, I've got this job offer. I think it'd be a lot easier for me. I need to get home at I can get home at 6 o'clock. I don't mind picking up work after that. The response from the firm was just amazing. They really helped me work through kind of the whole work-life balance challenge. And they said, well, what do you need? I said, well, I need help. I need to get another manager or a senior manager in here. I can't carry this load. There was myself, there was one guy that was doing executive comp, and then there was one manager. We didn't even have an admin. I was my own. So thank God I knew how to type. And in fact, they sent me a computer from somebody that was a used computer from the LA office. And I'll just never forget it was covered in smoke. I said, why is this thing gray? And then because people at that time were still smoking in their offices, right? So anyway, but I had to teach myself how to do a computer, what we'd call Word today. I didn't know how to do any of that with the commands or anything. But basically, they made it so that they said, you know what, we think that you could be a partner someday. I said, really? I don't even want to be a partner. I didn't come here to be a partner. I said, I just want to see if I could build something from scratch in a big company, and then I'll probably find another job because none of the people that interviewed me are left. And so I didn't have relationships, right? But they were just wonderful. And they said, you know what, we'll get you the resources that you need. And it was really, I learned an important lesson though, Shannon, that you got to ask. Do you know what I mean? If you don't ask, then you're not going to ever get it. I was afraid to ask. Now that whole Asian upbringing thing came into play where like, oh no, don't ever ask for anything. Just put your head down, work hard, and then they'll eventually notice that you're working hard and ask you what you need. Honestly, if the answer is no, it was already no if you don't ask. So you might as well ask and hear the no. By the way, I was very used to hearing no with all those cold calls I was making. So I was pretty thick-skinned by that time. But anyway, so I became a partner 5 years later in 1995. At that time, we'd grown the San Francisco office to about 40 people. And I was the person that was kind of leading that practice. At that time, I was the only partner. So it was really wonderful to kind of see it literally grow from zero all the way to, enough to support one partner. So I can't say enough about Deloitte. I mean, it was just the most amazing culture. It still is. Just wonderful people. I really flourished there. I learned so much, but it's also competitive. So I think it's a big company. The whole partnership structure, you have to build your own book of business. You have to build your own career path. So I, again, had a wonderful sponsor, mentors there that kind of helped me navigate the firm. But there were also some real challenges. I mean, I think everything that you get in your career or your life, you have to actually ask for it. And thank goodness I was not afraid to fail because I heard no a lot more than I heard yes. And I think for me, the song here is Don't Stop Believing, because it's really around not giving up on yourself and really going for it. So I think one of the turning points in my career there is when I was now running human capital in San Francisco. And I went to the managing partner of the entire office. And at the time, human capital was actually a separate function. We had not become part of Deloitte Consulting yet. So it was audit, tax, human capital, and financial advisory. And there was a management committee in San Francisco. And I went to the managing partner and I said, I'd like to be on the management committee because all of these other people that are running businesses are on the management committee. And he looked right at me and he said, no, that's not going to happen. And I said, well, why? And he said, well, because people don't see you as a leader. And in that very moment, there's like, you know how so much your brain works so quickly in those like nanoseconds of just like, okay, what do I do here? Do I start to cry? That's option A. Do I say, really? And or do I say, oh, you're absolutely right? Because that part of that self-doubt comes back and going, you're right. I'm not a leader. And then just leave the room. I'm sorry I asked. But in that very moment, I came back with a kind of a lighthearted, because I don't take myself that serious. I just looked at him. I said, well, that's because I'm not on the management committee. And, and he actually stopped and he got a big smile. He goes, that's a good point. So right then and there, it was like a lot happened in that moment in terms of just having the courage to say that and not take no for an answer, to really get deeper as to why. But then I kind of also laughed at myself and said, well, if I was on the management committee, maybe they'd see me as a leader. So what happened after that was what I think is the real lesson learned for me around staying true to your values. So his answer was, I'd love to have you, but right now we're part of the West region, and the guy that runs the West region human capital practice is actually on the management committee already. I'm not going to have two of you because the business is not that big, and I don't have two people from audit, et cetera. He said, so I'm going to have to ask him if he'll step down and then you could be on the management committee. Well, I knew he would, that this is my boss. I knew he was going to say no because I'd already asked him earlier, like 2 years earlier, if I could run the San Francisco practice. And he said no, because he didn't want to have me leave sales. So I ended up with it anyway. But I think at that moment, Shannon, I think what I really had to take a step back and look at it and just saying, do I want this job now if I'm not going to be on the management committee? So I went home and talked to my husband about it. My husband loves sports analogies. He goes, well, you basically been asked to hit a grand slam and you don't have a bat. I said, oh. And he goes, you, in other words, you will have all the responsibility, but none of the authority. He said, so you're going to have to decide what's important to you. So the next day I went back and I talked to the managing partner and I said, you know what? He hadn't even talked to the other individual yet about coming off. I said, before you do that, I just have to say something. And I don't mean to have this sound like a threat, but I'm just going to say that if I can't be on the management committee, then I don't want to be the managing partner of a human capital practice. Because at that point, we had 4 or 5 partners. And it was the hardest thing I've ever done to walk away something I've always wanted. I was there when we had 3 people. We now had 100. I want the whole thing. You know what I mean? And so it was really, really hard, but I knew that I would just never have the respect without being on that committee. So I was willing to walk away from that whole role and just go back to being a line partner with clients, which I still love to do. But it all turned out to work out. It took a couple weeks to kind of unfold. But I think that the pivotal time for me was really believing what was important to me and being willing to walk away from it if it wasn't gonna work, because I would never have been happy with just that title, but then I would never be viewed as that leader by my peers. And so I think, the lesson for me was about not stopping believing, don't stop believing in myself, and don't compromise your values for anybody. I know it looks on surface, I've just had nothing but success, but I've had far more failures than success in my career. And I just think those are the things that I take with me, and I'm not afraid to fail. And I've learned so much, and I'm grateful for the successes that I've had. But I also know that setbacks are part of it. I think the second setback I had was right before I got the big role, the national managing partner role for human capital. And I was in competition with somebody who was like almost 20 years younger than me. And he was kind of the favored person. But what ended up happening was he started bad mouthing me because we had mandatory retirement at Deloitte, and I was only going to be able to do the job for 3 years, whereas he could do the job for like 8 years or 10 years. And everybody before me had done the job for 8 or 9 years. And so there was a risk in me taking the role, be only able to do it for a few years and then retire. So he was out saying, Barbara's too old, she shouldn't get the job. Look at me. I could do it for 10 years. I live in New York. That's where everything happens. This is somebody on the West Coast, blah, blah, blah. And then, people who are my supporters said, Barbara, what are you going to do about this? I mean, this guy's like, you need to like throw some mud around yourself, and just like, here's some things about him that you could be saying. I'm going, I'm not going to go there. I said, that's not me. I'm not that person. I said, people have to see and want me to be in that role. The partners ultimately vote. I said, so if they really want somebody younger and they want that individual, then that's their decision. I'm not going to go around saying something about somebody just to make them look bad, because then I'm just lowering my own standards to do that. So I think, even to the very end of my career, Shannon, I was fighting for that, but the biggest person I had to fight was myself and my own wanting something really badly, but then always coming back to like, be you, be true to who you are. I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm a friend. What about all those people in my life? I have to look in the mirror at night and say, is that really who I am? Somebody who's just going to go out, just do anything to get a job? I've never had to do that. And maybe the job isn't for me.
Because you're not gonna compromise your values to fit in for that. Good for
Exactly.
you, and that's okay.
And that's okay. I was fine with that. I was fine with it because at the end of the day, I have to live with myself.
That's right.
I
Well,
have to,
you got the job.
I got the job.
We know the answer is you got the job.
Yeah, I was very lucky, but I also
You weren't just lucky is just not really what it was. You were the right person for the job. You had the right background, the right experiences, the right relationship, the right trust. You had all of the ingredients, and so the luck part I feel like is like a smidge. It's just small. The
yeah,
rest you had, and you take this job, and you wind up growing the practice, and you'd retire from Deloitte
yeah,
on a high. Now, so you grow this practice. You do have to retire because there's a mandatory retirement age.
right.
So when do you start thinking about the next phase of your life, which is where you are today, that you're gonna serve on boards. And I love your song. It's such a happy song.
Celebration.
Celebrate good times. Come on.
Yeah, I'm a party girl at heart, okay? So I love this song. It just makes me so happy. I feel like my life is a big celebration. I've always been an eternal optimist. That's just who I am. But this song just brings me joy. And I think that when I look at celebration, I look at celebrating everything that's happened, the ups and the downs, and the path that I've had, the disappointments and the opportunities, all of it all rolled in together. Because without the disappointments, you wouldn't appreciate the things that did get to happen. But back to your question about when did I start thinking about my next kind of move, what would I do after? I knew I didn't want to do nothing, but I also knew I didn't want another full-time role, like a C-suite role or an operating role. So it was really a matter of what can I do to really just continue to really keep my brain moving, contribute to a company's success. And at the time, this has been like 10 years now, board service was just kind of emerging as being that really desirable place as your next move for some people. I did a lot of nonprofit boards while I was at Deloitte because that's what we were allowed to do. You know, I did Girl Scouts of the USA, American Heart Association. I did a lot of things because I really enjoyed kind of trying to learn about governance. But I think there's such an important lesson around networks, and all of us have them. But I think I told people as I was leaving, I told the CEO at the time of VSP Vision, who I'd known for 30 years, because, you know, I often put VSP in for many of my clients. So I knew about their product. I knew it was a well-run company. I knew the leadership team. And so, you know, I just said, hey, I'm going to be looking to go on boards after I retire. And so if there's everything, I met with some of my other clients just to let them know. And what was so interesting is that, at least with VSP, which was my first board that I got on, about 6 months later, somebody from HR called me and said, hey, we have this advisory role that we have, and would you be interested in interviewing for it? So, you know, you just never know when that network is going to come back. But I think again, we talked about this early, you have to let people know what you want to do. Like if you don't say it, they can't just guess. And I think the more people you tell, it's not that you're expecting them to find you something, but it's really around, if you hear of anything, I'd love to be considered. I've only had one board role come through a search firm, and it's always been through kind of word of mouth and through other network connections that I have, that they hear of somebody who has this specific skill set, and then they think of you. So a lot of it is just letting people know, gee, I'm interested in boards. So I'd like to get on another board. I have one now, that kind of thing. Unless you say it out loud, people can't help you. And I always ask people, well, what are you looking for? And trying to learn more about their skill set and their expertise so that when I hear of something, I remember that Shannon's got this, she's a financial expert and she's a CFO and she's involved in tech companies and those kind of things. Like, how does that kind of come together? So I knew that that would be something that would be a perfect balance. And yet I still also wanted to do some nonprofit work or be involved. So I've been really active with the International Women's Forum, which I was a member of then, it was president. Well, actually over COVID for 2 years. And then, you know, now with Ascend Pinnacle and trying to give back to the Asian community, I've been doing that for a couple of years. So I just think there's that part of me that, and anytime I get a chance to just mentor other women, or if somebody calls me just saying, gee, could you help me with this? I'm just so anxious to do that because I love that. I love it so much. My life's been an incredible journey. And I just really believe, like, if all of this could happen to me, then anybody can do this. And I want to be a person that helps, you know, them follow their dream like I was able to do mine. And I just think that that's so important. And again, I look back to Vincent because I was his pay it forward. And I knew it because he told me a story about when he first started out and he didn't have a car. He only had like one suit, and his boss gave him enough money. I'm going to give you $25,000. I want you to go get a car, a decent car, because people are going to see what you drive up in. And that's really important when you're in sales. And then you need to have two suits. And he said when he finally earned enough money to pay him back, he wouldn't take the money back. His boss, he said, no. He said, your payback will be that you need to pay this forward. And so I remember when he told me that story, and I want to be that. I want to be Vincent. I want to be the person that pays it forward because I've had so much, Shannon, you know, so much. And there's nothing more joyful. I want to find joy. I'm finding joy in everything that I get to do, but I also want to give joy. I want to give back. I think that's really who I am.
Well, I can attest for the fact that I know you do it, and I've seen you do it to so many people, and it actually was an honor to join the cohort that we are in together. That is kind of a cross global cohort with a bunch of women board directors in the United States, with a bunch of women board directors in Japan, and we are learning best practices from each other. But as I started this podcast, person by person on that Zoom call talked about the impact you have made in their career, in their life, and why they saw your name on the email as somebody doing it, and they were like, "Sign me up," myself included. So you are doing it. You wanna do it, and you are doing it, and I thank you for doing it.
Well, thank you for all that you do. I mean, look at you. You're on boards, you're doing this. I see you at every NACD, Women Extraordinary Women on Boards, Equilar things. I'm just very grateful for everything, all the blessings, all the opportunities, all the
Yeah.
lessons.
Well,
Yeah.
we could talk to you like all day. We're going to wrap this up. But before we wrap up, we want to know how can people follow you and support you? What's your favorite medium? And then we want to know the one song that if you were walking down the street and you heard that song came on, you would just smile and you'd just be happy.
Well, I'd say you could follow me on LinkedIn. I'm definitely great at responding if you want to reach out. And I think for me, the one thing I would love to help you all with, or anyone out there listening, is just how can I help you? How can I hear your story and help you with your journey? Because I find that to be the most joyful and gratifying thing that I can do today. And I just really love seeing other people succeed and being able to enjoy what I've been able to enjoy, and really the fulfilling of the dreams that I didn't even think were possible way back when. And I still have to pinch myself sometimes to understand and recognize that it really all did happen. So I feel very, very grateful for that. And in terms of a song, that's an easy one. You said the word happy. So I love the song Happy by Pharrell Williams and Justin Timberlake. And that song literally, it just makes me smile. That along with Celebration, which I put in my list already. I just think it just epitomizes the world that I feel that I've been able to live in. I am happy. I'm that eternal optimist. I'm a little corny around that, but I do believe. I do believe anything can happen, and I want that for everybody.
Oh my God.
So,
It
yeah.
has been such a pleasure to interview you. Let's recap your playlist. Your playlist is actually a happy, joyful playlist, and I love it. I'm here for it. Your first song was Somewhere Over the Rainbow. Your second song was I Will Survive by Gloria Gaynor. Your third song was Defying Gravity. Several versions of that song as well, but from Wicked. Your fourth song was Don't Stop Believing by Journey. And your last song was Celebration by Good Old Cool and the Gang. And the bonus song is Happy by Pharrell Williams with Justin Timberlake. Barbara, such a happy playlist. Thank you for bringing that joy into our life. And thank you for being on No Boxes, Just Verses.
Oh, Shannon, again, thank you for this wonderful, amazing conversation and the opportunity to share a story today, but most to be included in this, I think really groundbreaking. We both love music. I just think it's so unique and special. I think anybody listening in would just love that. Hearing songs, they're going to, if nothing else, they'll go out and want to listen to the songs. And that's something that I think, like you said, unifies all of us is music.
And that's a wrap. Thank you so much for listening to No Boxes, Just Verses. And if this episode moved y'all, please share it, rate us, follow the show on your favorite platform, and we can keep building our leadership playlists together. So you can find me, guys, on Instagram as Shannon Nash1 and No Boxes Just Verses on Instagram. You can also find me on LinkedIn as Shannon Nash ESQ CPA. You can also find No Boxes Just Verses on LinkedIn. You can visit our website at noboxesjustverses.com. Finally, don't forget to check out the show notes. The show notes are super important because this is where the playlists will live. You will be able to get these playlists on Apple and Spotify. You'll also be able to follow up and see how to reach out to the guests, follow them, and support them. Until next time, I need you to stay unboxed. You come for the stories, but you stay for the playlists. I'm Shannon Nash, and I'm out.